Anyway, hey guys, Daniel James here, and today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at some of the new features found in Steinberg's new update to Cubase, Cubase 12. We'll be going over some of the new features, and I'll also be trying to write some music with some new plugins that I've bought externally, and then using Cubase's new features in it. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is being done on live stream, so this could go all over the place. We may end up spending a bit more time on plugins than on Cubase, but if you're here for Cubase, I'll cover that first. But anyway, without further ado, let's go back to it. So anyway, here is Cubase 12, and as you can see, it looks exactly like Cubase 11. The thing I did want to mention about it, though, is the previous versions didn't do this, but Cubase 12 brings across the color settings that you had in Cubase 11. Like, it didn't happen that way in Cubase 10 for me, or 9, and I had to redo them. So the first thing, my God, thank God the colors came over. So the second thing, and this is the biggest thing, this is what most of the stream's going to be built around, because whenever I do these videos, I always do them about how they work best for me. And I've already seen that plenty of other people have done great videos reviewing Cubase and going in depth on all of the features. The ones I'm going to be showing are the ones that are very specifically usable for me as a working composer in the film and game industry. So you guys can see, you know, if you're in my field, what you might also find interesting. But anyway, so the biggest thing is they've added this new tab down at the bottom. This one here, the MIDI remote, right? And so for the longest time, you guys know this, I have a Korg Nano control, right? So I have a Korg Nano control here, and now, brand new, I have the Audio Imperia Fade, which is a four fader MIDI controller, right? It outputs MIDI data. Now, the interesting thing, or the amazing thing about Cubase 12 that I am loving is this new MIDI integration system. Now, I know this looks weird, but what this allows you to do, and I'm going to add a new one. So here I haven't mapped my key station, right? So let's just put, is M audio even a thing? So I'm just going to put M audio, and I'm going to put key station 61, right? And this is what I did for all the other ones as well, right? And then you can literally design your MIDI controller, which is insane, right? So just to show you that again. So I've set this one up. And as you can see, it mirrors how the actual Nano control goes. So I've got my transport controls at the bottom. I've got some buttons here, all the faders along the top, and then you'll see, by the way, that I haven't included my faders on it, and I'll go into why in a minute. That's the wrong one. There we go. So on my Korg Nano control, if you don't know what the Korg Nano controls, or you want to follow along, just Google Korg Nano Control 2 and look at the picture, and it'll make more sense to you. So anyway, what you do is you go to that window that I was on. I'll set up my key station, and you do your little edit button, and you don't have it as one big button. So my key station does actually have buttons on it, right? It's got some controls up here. Now, I don't know if this one will, yeah, that didn't work. That didn't attach to anything. So that means that's coming through as MIDI, as in these keys. But the thing is these MIDI keys, for some reason, are clicking. I'm not sure why. To be honest, I'm not going to map my key station because it's not really designed for it. But if these buttons, normally, so these buttons aren't working. I don't know why. I don't know enough about the system yet to know how it works. But if you watch, when I push a MIDI key, you see that it assigned it to that thing, right? If I make that a button, and I'm not going to do this because it'll actually like overwrite my settings, but that key now controls that data. You see, look, if I push it soft, if I push it hard, it's turning it all the way up. So now my MIDI controller is controlling something, and this is where it gets fucking crazy, okay? The mapping assistant. So now if I hit that C key, which is on my keyboard, so you could literally have a little 25 key keyboard off to the side. And what you can do is you can turn every single button of that MIDI keyboard, or at least any button that will trigger this window down here, you can assign it to any of Cubase's functions. And I'm talking about anything. So like render in place, render settings, right? So now when I push that key, it's going to bring up my render settings, and I'm pushing a MIDI key there, right? And this isn't set up like this. You don't have to do anything with the M Audio thing. All the keyboard has to do is be seen as a MIDI device. The fade is Audio Imperious thing. I don't even know if, like, I think they're still like finalizing their firmware. So even this I was able to assign just because it shows up as a MIDI device. So what I actually need to do now, so now you know how that works. What I actually need to do is like somehow delete this one because I do not want my keyboard every time I hit that middle note to, right, so we definitely need to delete this. Is there an easy way to delete? Can I just delete? Can I right click? I don't know how you delete one, but I need to delete one. If I remember correctly, it's in the Studio MIDI Remote Manager, maybe? Yeah, so the key station, I'm just going to disable that controller script. So what, like, as you can see, by the way, there is a built-in one for the Nano Control 2. You see, like, it's perfectly designed for it. But I switched that off, and there is a very real reason for it, right? So you guys have seen me use my Nano Control many, many times. I'll just show you guys the wide angle. So when I play my keyboard like this. In fact, let me load up a dynamic instrument like a string quickly. So when I play, I have my MIDI keyboard here, as you guys can see, and that's where I play my notes, right? But then I use my thumb here because the Nano Control, and that's my mod wheel. Most people use one hand and they do the mod wheel over here. I use my thumb here. The reason I do that, it allows me to do chords and dynamics in one place. Right? So I can sort of manipulate the chords and the sounds. Like if I'm doing a melodic line, I'll do it with one hand on the controller. Right? That's how I manipulate MIDI. Now the problem is, and the biggest issue that I'm having so far with this MIDI integration, it's amazing integration. To the point where literally I've had the Nano Control, no joke, for 10 years. And I've never been able to use the transport control buttons like the play, stop, record, the marker buttons, the track control, because the way to integrate into Cubase never quite worked correctly. Either the faders wouldn't work as MIDI CC, the dials wouldn't work. It just didn't, there was no cohesive way to pull it together. So now because I can literally design it myself, like I can set up what I want it to do. But if you use the one that they provide, so let me just show you that one again. If you use the script that they provide, which is this one, the faders are no longer MIDI CC. So like the Korg Nano Control has its own software. Most MIDI controllers do. They have their own software that you use in order to change the buttons to do whatever you want to do, right? Korg Nano Control has a separate editor. And so with the Korg Nano Control, you could either set everything to MIDI CC numbers or you could set everything to program control. So it could either operate like this, like the Cubase integrated one, where the faders become quick controls. So if you don't know what a quick control is, like you can see it here, QC. But a quick control is basically like when you have a plugin, like, wait, where's my mix window? Oh, I'll put my mix window over here. When you have a plugin, you can quick control. So what would usually happen is the faders were these quick controls, and it meant that I could no longer use the faders which I'd assigned custom. So I've assigned this fader here, which you can't see, but I'll try and show you. So this fader here, the fader number 1, I set to mod wheel. Fader number 2, I set to expression. Fader number 3, I set to CC7, which is volume. Okay, so that way I always had control over the dynamics. If you use the built-in Korg Nano Control software, that fader becomes a quick control, and Cubase at the minute, and I hope they add it, at the minute doesn't allow you to assign anything as a CC number. As soon as they do that, every single MIDI piece of gear out there is going to become instantly the most powerful thing for controlling your DAW, and you don't realize it yet. The fact that you can map it yourself, and I'm going to show you the kind of shit we can do with it in a minute. So what you can do, this is a cool workaround. So I'm speaking more specifically to people who use Korg Nano controls here, and you may be able to do it with your own. But if you can change your device to MIDI CC mode, where it's putting out CC information like MIDI CC1 instead of control changes like transport play, transport stop, record, what you do is when you're setting up your instrument, first things first, disable the main one, disable their one, create a new one like we did here. So you go create brand new. And then what you do is you just start assigning your buttons, but do not assign your faders, because anything that you don't touch, anything that you don't reassign is left in its base state, which is actually very, very useful. So instead of this taking over the faders and just being nothing because I haven't assigned it to anything, it just leaves them alone. So all of my faders are putting out MIDI CC information so I can control my MIDI information, but everything else is controlling Cubase, which is exactly what you want it to do, but is exactly what it would not do until Cubase built the workaround. And so what you can also see is I've also built my Audio Imperia fade, right? So this is, as you can see down here, the 4-controller MIDI box. Now this I'm getting some weird like glitches with, but as this is like beta hardware and like brand new software, I don't know which one. Only with this though, I get some like jitteriness on the faders until I move to the next page and then move back and then it stops. So it's not the fader that's broken. Otherwise that would be happening all the time, but something about it. But anyway, so I've mapped this and you can see that, look, I can map all these and go across to this and do that and blah, blah, blah. And also we can map anything we want on this. Oh, it's a shame it didn't keep my settings from the last one. I'm going to have to change my mappings. But what I normally set these to is, so if we look at this, so, and this is why I'm talking about this being a feature I can't live without anymore. So the fade, right, this brand new, just as I'm saying, this new MIDI control, this outputs MIDI. It's not a system controller. It's not designed to control anything in Cubase, okay? It's not designed that way. It's designed to output MIDI. And until now, that was just the end of it. But what we can do now is, because these faders are assigned to nothing, if I bring up my mix window, right, and I right-click, I can pick for MIDI remote mapping, right? And I click volume. And now what it's going to do is it's put that string group as the target. Now all I need to do is move what I want to control it. You see that's automatically done, and apply mapping. So now when I close this mapping is now my group bus. Again, it's doing that glitchy thing. I can stop it just by changing the panel. So again, don't look at that. That could be the hardware. That could be Cubase. I'm not sure which is doing it. I did set this up, but I forgot to like save it as a global thing. I must have saved it as a project one. But you can just do the same for all the other ones. You click that, do that, apply the mapping, click that, apply the mapping. Click that, apply the mapping. And now, like, even if I hadn't assigned that before, you saw how quick that was. So let's say that I've rendered out my stems and I want to do a new balance mix. Now I can put all 4 fingers. Oh, I didn't mix this one properly. Let's do this one. Right, and then close this. Right, so now I've got control of all 4. And so this, look at them going crazy. So this device, even though up until now, like it would have only been able to use, I would have only been able to use it for MIDI controlling, right? Which would have been a difficult sell for me. So like, this is what I was saying to Jan from Audio Imperia, like if he was sure he wants to send it to me, because, you know, I work a very weird way. Let me just set these back to where they were. Again, I hope we can figure out that glitching problem. Again, all I need to do is just go through like that. And again, I will figure that out, but don't hold that against either of them for now, because they're both brand new. Anyway, so because I now have that function, any MIDI controller now can be there. But here's another cool thing, like because it's got 4 buttons along the top, what I can also do is, if I bring up that mix window again, I can say also I could pick for MIDI remote map solo, right? And it'll do the same thing. And I have a button, you know, like you can see it here. I have the buttons across the top 4 buttons here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this button here and apply the mapping. Now, here's the interesting thing. At the minute, it's on a toggle, right? So if I close this and I hit that button, oh, you can't see it. So it was on a toggle, right? I'll just show you that one more time. So let me just, so you see the solo strings, I'm pushing the button and I'm going to apply that mapping. And you see, because it's on a toggle, that means that if I was doing some strings work or something along those lines, I can make it at like, I just want to listen to the strings in this moment or whatever. I can now just hold that button down and it will solo the strings. But then when I lift off, it's no longer soloed. And so that's useful to have. Like if I'm mixing between the four, like if I'm trying to get a balance mix between my stems, I can do it like that. And if one particularly standing out, now all I need to do is just solo it just by holding the thing and I can listen to it. So now instead of mixing like how I used to, which is like I would play it and then slowly try and guesstimate between the two of them, which one does what, you know? Instead of trying to guesstimate what happens, I can now sort of balance it with the fader. And so, as I was saying, so I told Jan, you know, when they first set it out, is that the way I work is this. This is how I manipulate MIDI data with my thumbs under here. So like this would have been too cumbersome for the way I work. But I definitely wanted to find a use for this. And so Cubase has turned what was a MIDI instrument now into a mix desk, essentially. It's non-motorized. There's no motors or anything. But it's now essentially a mix desk. So if I want to do some fades between things, I can now just do it here. The other cool thing about this, the fade, is, I don't know if you can tell, it's changing color down at the bottom there, the buttons. That's because it has 4 separate pages. So even though there's 4 faders, as you can see on my window here, I have assigned every fader that you can at the moment get to. So it's actually, well, how many do we have? 16. We have 16 faders technically out of a box of 4 with 16 buttons that you can assign to anything, right? And so here's the other cool thing. So let's just close the window. So you guys get how this works now, right? You understand like the logic behind how this works. So as you can see, I have QCs on my faders, right? So I have my Korg Nano Control, and there's all my faders along the bottom. By the way, my dog might bark because my wife's coming home. She gets very excited. Just ignore it. Anyway, so we have all the faders. You can see they're quick controls. So what these do, if they work, right, let me pull up my mix window. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working as well today. I'm not sure what I broke. So the way I set this up, and I'm not sure why it's not working today. I'm going to unplug and plug this back in. Let's see if that fixes it. Yeah, there we go. So for some reason, I needed to just restart this. It's probably the amount of MIDI that we're messing with. So you can see that like now it's operational. Sometimes it does that. I don't know why, but the MIDI was disconnected there. So you can see I have my solo buttons here. And the way the Korg Nano Control goes is there's a fader with solo mute controls. And that's supposed to like act like the tracks, like the mix window, like I was showing you. So, you know, like MIDI control is supposed to be one, and then the solo button would do that. So, but the way I've got it set up is it will solo whatever track I'm on. So I only have one button for solo, one for mute, and they're on the same track, and then record enable, right? Which is great, you know, if I'm doing the things. But here's another cool thing. So let's say that we're on like a string instrument, or you know, here. If you look down at the window at the bottom, Christ, what am I doing? Hang on. I can't resize. Hang on. There we go. There we go. I thought I was going to open up something random then, but I didn't. Right. So if you look at this, so you see this one down here. This one's different from the other. So my first dial is actually an AI mouse knob, I guess. It's called an AI thing. But you can see it changes depending over what I'm hovering. Wherever my mouse is, if Cubase can control it as a quick control, it will automatically go. So if I hover over, now I just move this knob here, and it will control wherever my mouse is. So if I want to get in and just control like the dynamics of something, say like this track is too loud in this specific point, I just hover my mouse up here over the volume, and now I have full control of it, of this one dial. And this one dial will do anything. I can go here, hover over the pan, and I don't need to keep like figuring out which dial does what. I just need to make sure my mouse is over it. And the other cool thing about this, so this can be integrated like directly with plugins, but plugins have to add it. But if you have something like their compressor, if you have like Steinberg's things, then the controls will go. So you can, you change your ratio, you can change your attack, change your threshold, but not every plugin will support it. So if I just do that again, I'm just going to put my window over the other side now. So if I put it over here, and load up, say, Arts Acoustic, you'll see that like it does nothing, right? But here's where it gets fun. So up in the top right, they have this QC button now, the quick control. You click that, and now you have access to everything. So you remember down here, we have QC buttons, right? So this is QC1, QC2, QC3, QC4, QC5, blah, 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 right? So this is, the way you do this is, so this is QC1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I click the dry level here, if I click the learn button first, right? And it highlights, so you click the one you want to change. So I'm going to change quick control 1, and I want that to be the wet knob, right? So now the wet dial is done. And now if I unlearn that, now I have control of that on my MIDI controller, right? So now that quick control, which on this MIDI controller is now assigned, as you can see down at the bottom here, on contact, as you can see, this quick control here, currently on nothing. By the way, it's a focused quick control. So you have to be on the plugin to use it. It's not just assigned to that all the time. So as soon, watch this quick control down here. As soon as I click the plugin, all of my faders are now assigned to this thing, but I'm not stuck with any assignments, right? I can change what it is assigned to. So here I've put the wet dial. Here I've accidentally set up a double link. To change that, you just click learn, go on to your second one, and let's make that the dry signal, right? And then turn off the learn. So now I have wet signal on that one and I have dry signal on that one, which is amazing because now this MIDI controller that I've had for 10 years and I've only ever been able to do MIDI CC, now I can literally musically bring in my reverb. I can program it like this. And so every plugin now that has automatable elements on its UI, and by automatable, I mean, if you clicked right and moved it, it's automatable, meaning you can control it with a quick control. So if, for example, we had, I got this brand new plugin. In fact, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at some plugins. Oh, in fact, before we do that, remind me, I want to show you a noise plugin. Just remind me of that. So here's another cool thing that they added. This is sort of separate and sort of related. And the reason I'm loving this update so fucking much is because the way all the updates they've done sort of well, not all of them, but the main updates they've done sort of roll into one another, right? And so your workflow, instead of just having one cool new thing, is instead 30% more efficient, right? So it's a different way of looking at the numbers. But anyway, so let me pull in this thing here. I'm just going to solo it. And I'm going to put in this, and then let's just have it go repeating, right? Right, very, very unpleasing machine gun effect. So they've also updated their Logic editors. Where did I put them? Is it this one? Is it this one? There it is. So they've updated their Logic editors. So most of you probably have never looked at this before in your life, right? But what it allows you to do, it allows you to say that if, a note is selected, then do thing to note. And I set a couple of these up myself. For example, I made one called Humanize MIDI, right? And what this does is basically when the type, and you can copy this, by the way, feel free, it's very easy one. Type is equal to note. Make sure you close that bracket, right? Set the random value between -6 and +4. And the reason I did -6 and +4 is this is my Humanize thing. And so I know that when I program drums in, more often than not, I'm programming them louder than I am programming them too soft. That was a word I couldn't say. And so when I humanize, I want it to bring things down more so than I want it to make anything jump up higher. So what I do now is I just select everything there and apply this. And you see now we have, right, still pretty bad, but we can apply it again. Right, and we'll keep doing it, and it'll eventually get quieter and quieter. Right, it's not perfect. This is a bad example of a drum because the drum itself seems quite repetitive. But another cool thing you can do is let me put +10. So I also added add note velocity, right? But here's the interesting thing. So I've made it so that you can apply it to add velocity, right? So we have these, we see the velocity down here. And how often have you wanted to do something and then you're like, okay, I just want to turn it down, and then you have to select all the things. Here's a cool thing. You can select them, but you can also, as we've been doing, you can see here, because I made a function and saved it, right? In this little window down here, I'll just show you how it works. If I bring up the mapping editor, on this button here, what I've actually done, although they don't seem to be, oh no, they are there. So what you could do is if I type in the search browser, Humanize MIDI, you see that logic that I just built in the Logic editor is assignable to the MIDI controllers that on anything you want. So as you can see, I now on this, even though the button on my Korg Nano control says mute, solo, and record like this, solo, mute, record, right? The top button is Humanize MIDI. The middle one is velocity up, and the bottom one is velocity down. So when I'm working, if I'm just like, oh, everything needs to come down, what I can do, I need to close this first, select what I want to come down. And now on my MIDI controller, I can now just pump them up or pump them down. Or if they're too much, just humanize them a bit more, humanize them a bit more, humanize them a bit more, pull them all down. I'm probably going to do one that compresses as well. So like this motion that compresses them closer. I'm not quite sure how to set that one up in the Logic editor yet, but like I'm going to set the expansion compression thing to match as well. But that is super powerful because that means that I can, whilst working on a thing, be doing, you know, having the thing going, listening to it in context, and instead of being like, I no longer have that whole clicking and holding process. I literally just listen and go louder. It's funny how Reaper allowed you to do the same things years before. Like, let's not get into that DAW whataboutism. Like, the thing with DAWs is all of them do different things separately, but it's cohesion that matters. It doesn't matter whether or not you could do these things earlier. If you didn't have this degree of MIDI integration, you're missing the important integrated step of using it. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's why I love this update so much, because that Logic editor has been updated. By the way, I have my Logic editor on. I have my Logic editors on the button as well. So, like my MIDI, my Korg Nano control opens the actual things as well. And remember, like, so the Logic editor is sort of like being able to program your own Cubase functions. So if you want it so that it like renders things a certain way, you can set it up. It can be like, if this track, like if the, like it's an if then statement basically. If the thing selected is within the boundary and is not muted and its velocity is +10, then compress volume to within 5% and render out on render in place on a new track with these settings. You could set that up and then make that a button on your controller. And that's what I'm trying to put across why this is so powerful, because they're all sort of integrated. Anyway, I absolutely love that. And I hopefully you guys can see how powerful that is. By the way, just on the fade thing, because I did say to Jan that I would mention it. So for those of you wondering, this is the new fade controller. As you can see, they've got a new UI that follows the fader up at the top there. Shows the MIDI CCs that they're normally assigned to, but because I'm not using the CCs, they just say CC numbers that are not applied. Up here, you have the next page and back page buttons. They're really nice. Like, one thing that they were telling me about Audio Imperia, and like I think it probably speaks to why it's more expensive than a lot of people were expecting, is all of the parts are premium quality. It's like you can build these much cheaper, but like this is like solid metal, good weight. It's actual wood that's been ingrained. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe if we go really close, you can probably just make out the ingraining on the side there. Engraving, rather. So it's been engraved on the side there. That's actually easy. You can see the buttons easier there as well. And so when I move the faders, you see it shows on there. And like, that's what makes me think that it might not be the controller that's broke. You see, there's no glitching or anything on this display. And the data that it puts out is fine when I change settings. So I'm not sure why that's doing the thing. The faders feel great. Nice and smooth, really long action. They do work great. And it's just a very simple unit, the way you plug it in. just a MIDI C, just a USB-C on the back, and then there is a MIDI in on the back. But as I said, so like if you don't have a MIDI controller at all, it's a great one for MIDI control. But genuinely, if you use Cubase, that's the combo. Like the combo is Korg Nano Control and the fade together, because the fade now is my mix box. So you guys have seen when I work, you know, like this is my template. I always have this. So I always have a string group, a brass group, percussion group. Like this is the template. This never changes. And because this is 8 faders, it's perfectly set up for this. So when I'm working, I now just have my group buses assigned to this. And if I want to change them, I can do that easily. And that's, again, like that's been an issue with Steinberg before. They add a thing, but then they don't make it easy to use. Just being able to pick and then remap by moving whatever MIDI controller I want on any device is amazing. And so I genuinely, for those of you who have MIDI devices sitting in a cupboard, like 25 key keyboards that you only use for like taking, out on when you're on the road or something, set up a Cubase profile with it and turn every key into a macro. Make the first one render in place, the next one turn thing up. And now all of a sudden you don't need to do all these weird key commands or right-click in menus, or because now you have buttons. So I'm looking at my buttons now, like what do I assign to the things? So I have that, I have this, and I also have my Steam Deck now, which has all of my macro controls that I want to be in words. So the ones like insert range, delete range, new group, new plugin, new track, legato, resize to grid, reverse, things that like I need to know exactly what they are because I use them a lot are there. Everything else in terms of manipulating Cubase, I'm going to try and keep on these. But I've already gone against that by having the functions assigned to some of these buttons. But it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And as soon as I knew that this was what they'd done, like my jaw dropped. At first, I was a little worried because like I mentioned, with the MIDI mapping, you can't do CC. So hopefully they add that. I don't see that being that difficult. All that would be is because, like, here's the thing. We know for a fact that it can see motion, right? And we know that the motion goes between 0 and 127 because that's all MIDI puts out, right? So we know that it is putting out information that we can use. All this application needs to do is send MIDI CC data out of it. And then you could assign anything to anything. I could make one of the buttons be a key. Like if I have like a special button that makes an explosion sound, you can do that. So all of these new possibilities are incredible. And here was the other one I was going to show you, by the way. So really powerful for using all those things, but the most powerful, and I was talking about this before we started the stream, before we started the video part of the stream, is having tactile control means that you are now engaged with the music, right? When I'm using my mouse and I'm moving this, I am not engaged with the music. I am editing the music, right? I'm not playing this like an instrument when I'm clicking and holding. But again, remember this QC button up here means that I can now assign anything to anything, right? This is a good one to actually point out the fact. So on even instruments, like you can see my AI knob is doing nothing, but it will, like if I hover over these ones, which it can control, it will pop up. So just a heads up to developers. If you're doing plugins and stuff, make it so that, like, I don't know how this works. I'm not programming enough, but if we can use that AI knob, that makes everything super powerful. But anyway, so let's say that I want to control this, right? So let's learn this. I definitely want to control this big knob. So I'll control that with this. I definitely want to control filter. So I'll control that with the next one. Definitely, I've already set this one up. I want to control resonance, so we'll do it with that one. What else could we do? We'll change the pitch as well. We'll put that on the fourth one. And so now if I turn off learn, now I have all of these functions. Now I'm integrated with the system. So now if I just trigger this, by the way, this is a new plugin I picked up. I really love it. It's going to be great for doing sound design. It's literally just a noise generator that has different types of noise, but you can manipulate it. In fact, I'm going to put it in a reverb. Let me do that first, because I feel like working into a reverb always sounds a little better. Bit of black hole. Why not? Right, so what I can do now is, now that this is in focus, I have control of these things. I'm just going to trigger it so it's always going. rotate there a little bit. Why didn't that one work? Some of my faders are broken, I think. There we go. Okay, so now I'm tactile. I'm in now. So let me put the filter on. Right, so now I can do whatever I want with this thing. And I have full tactile control. And it's insane, like, just being able to do that. Now, someone in the chat says you can use synthesizer for creating these types of sound. I know, but this plugin is just designed for it. Right, and so, you know. So like if I'm doing a track. And you see like how this is just constantly evolving. Another cool thing, Soviet tape, that hasn't aged well. Technically, as it hasn't. But like, here's a cool thing. Like, you can also look at the pictures. I know that's like a weird thing, but being able to see where the noise comes from does sort of give you like a weird inspirational vibe. By the way, as we are still talking about, remember all of these are the 8 quick controls that Cubase will always see. Remember any time, like if I'm like, oh, I really wish like I could control the mix of this, I can like at any time just learn the quick control, click the number that I want it to be, and then click. Then you click what you want it to be. You don't even have to touch the fader really, because the quick control is determined by the software, right? So because this is assigned quick control 4, this is assigned quick control 5. Whatever I sign here, like I don't need to do it here. It's just that will always control QC1. Whatever's highlighted on the screen in that moment will be QC1. So like if I go to black hole now, QC1 would actually control the mix. So you see, like that dial on here does that, but if I move to this, it moves that. And again, this is the most powerful addition to Cubase forever. Like I don't know how to explain how powerful this is. Like there is something to be said about musicality with effect that you are incapable of doing with a mouse. You can sort of automate these things. Thank you for the subscription, Frank Lassie. You can automate these things, but you need, like, with music, you need to feel it. Like if something's got a build, give it a human build. If something's got like a rhythm, try it. Like that is a musical way of interacting with digital synthesizers. Up until now, one of the main reasons one would use an analog synth is it has all the dials, and the dials breed creativity because you are interacting with it. The motion of your hand is being interpreted as your brain by your brain as a musical motion. When you move the mouse, it feels like a technical motion. When you're moving a dial and something responds in real time to it, that is a musical stimulation, let's call it. So if you have multiple of them and you're manipulating them together, you're not thinking about mixing or anything like that. You're in the musical moment because your brain is engaged physically with the instrument now. Whereas before you sort of had that layer of mouse between you. Yeah, exactly. Tactile feedback is a good word for it. Because you have that tactile feedback, all of these digital synths, which before you may have just looked at and been like, yeah, okay, I'll just do this, now become like fully functioning synths that you can manipulate and create these brand new sounds and things just using plugins. So like if I was to have this going, right? And then come here. And then I click back to this window. Now I've created a really weird reverb that's like almost like a tiny room. But at any time I can come back to this, start increasing the size again. Click back to this. Take all the lows out, take all the high out, just the lows.